Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. It's your host, Matt Zahab. We are buzzing as always, and I'm super pumped to have this lad back on the show for numero dos. That is round two. John Paller is on the show today. You guys have heard of ETHDenver, the biggest, maybe even the biggest crypto conference in the whole crypto sphere. Definitely the biggest ETH-related crypto conference. John is a Denver-based blockchain entrepreneur, inventor, and futurist, and is the founder and executive steward of ETHDenver, the world's largest Web3 and Ethereum-based innovation festival. He's also the founder and executive steward of Opolis, a digital employment cooperative for independent workers. He discovered ETH back in 2015, has been in this space for many, many years, done it all, and in 2014, he was awarded the coveted 40 under 40 by the Denver Business Journal for his contribution to shaping the future of business. We had an absolute blast. It was a treat and a half last time he came on, and he's back for round two. John, pumped to have you. How's everything going, my friend? Great to have you back.
Busy, Matt. Good to see you. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Good to see you too. I don't recall if I asked you about your background, but for the listeners who are driving and can't see John's background, it is absolutely electric. It gives me Catan vibes. I don't know if I'm way off there, but you got to explain your background. What is that?
So this was the world's first NFT scavenger hunt that was done in ETHDenver 2019. We did a partnership with Gitcoin when they were experimenting with a product called Kudos. So Gitcoin Kudos was basically a reward system with an NFT, right? So you could give a kudos to somebody. This is pre-POAP, where you could give somebody an NFT as recognition for doing something. Well, what we did is we basically created 18 spaces and places in the venue in 2019 where you could go and collect these POAPs. And if you did that, you actually got the 19th one right here as the reward for doing all of them. So that's the most scarce. And every one of these tiles is actually an NFT itself. So the aggregate art is an NFT, and then the individual tiles are NFTs. And I own this piece because I bought it at auction in the art gallery in 2019 from the community. So this is a pretty historical piece of art, in my opinion, because it's literally the first time that you could call it engagement farming was incentivized in an event format. And it was a lot of fun to do. It's cool. Very cool.
So cool. I love it.
Well, you know what? Here's the best part about it. POAP was actually invented at ETHDenver 2019, in part inspired by this.
So that's how POAPs were started.
At 2019, yeah. So Patricia Werthalter was a hacker, and he, was toying around with this idea. And then we had done some of this experimentation, this dog fooding, we call it, where we're just messing around and coming up with ideas to, reward people for these, engagement farming activities. And they created POAP, and, POAP will be back to ETHDenver at 2024 again this year, because it's, it's such a cornerstone of the community now. And, it's pretty cool. We front ran POAP, right? Not that I would phrase it that way. I like to think it more of, we contributed to the creative spark and collision that created POAP, but it's still pretty cool.
I love that. I didn't have that on my show notes or bingo card today, the origin story of POAP, but I love that. John, let's get right into ETHDenver 2024. You guys have been doing this for a while now. Every year it gets bigger, it gets better, it gets more efficient, more of the big boys, more of the big gals. Everyone is flying into beautiful Denver to make this happen. Give us the TLDR, give me the elevator pitch. What's new? What's happening? What are the big things planned for this year's ETHDenver?
Well, I think what's happened is ETHDenver has become really two things. It's the Super Bowl of crypto when it comes to getting together and comparing notes and seeing your friends and family reunion and all the different things. And then I think the other thing is, because of the time of year, we're really the first major event coming out the back end of the holidays. And call it a tone setting opportunity, right? So the curiosity is always about, well, what are we going to be talking about? What are the topics, right? Is it decentralized infrastructure? Is it going to be, DeFi V2? Is it going to be DAOs V2? Is it going to be whatever, right? Regulatory clarity. 2024 is an election year in the U.S., right? So political landscape. What are the pluses and minuses? What are the movements? What are the trajectories? Who are the players? That kind of thing. So I think what ends up happening is ETHDenver becomes sort of the distiller for that narrative for the year. So what we decide to put on our stage is how we decide to frame things. Sort of, we do it based on what we see, right? So there's a lot of signal and inputs that go into how we sort of manage and create content and schedules and sort of narrative. But then that narrative gets formed and then sort of walks into the rest of the year as a sort of fairly baked thing. Not that there aren't changes, additions, subtractions, but like we've been pretty consistently successful at doing that over the past 6 years.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I love, and unfortunately, I will not be in attendance this year, but the week after, there's just so much gold content that is out there. You get to I get on Telegram, I get on iMessage, Twitter DMs, emails, ask people what they saw, what tickled, their fancy. Are there any areas in particular, NFT 2.0, DAO 2.0, DeFi 2.0, again, for lack of better terms, we're just throwing 2.0 out there. I mean, we could be already at 3 or 4.0, but what areas of sort of the ETH related ecosystem are getting you going and are you most excited for at ETHDenver?
Well, I think 2024, we're going to see some finality around layer 2, call them the protocol wars. I think, we don't have any fights anymore about TCP IP or HTTPS or any of this crap. We just use it. Eventually Web3 is just going to be used on these, whatever rails get decided on. And I think the appetite for a lot of this is sort of waning. And I think we've solved a lot of the issues. If they're not fully solved yet, I think they're going to be solved. I think what that ushers in is a huge opportunity for investment into user-facing tools, whether it's UI, UX in general, or it's DAO tooling, governance tools, or whatever it is. If you look at the dollar for dollar investments in protocols versus just DAO tooling or UI, UX, it's like 1,000 to 1, right? Like,
that's crazy.
Imagine if we had put in that kind of money to UI, UX, where would we be with adoption? So my prediction is you're going to see a huge effort from the community, call it the great abstraction, right? Like where we've got to get the user experience and user interface in crypto products to better, cheaper, faster, which is how we compete in Web 2.0 products. Like you don't win, acknowledging a trade-off in crypto, right? We've been for the past 5-6 years making excuses for ourselves about these trade-offs that we have to make around, security and privacy and cost of transactions and all these things. And like, I honestly think if we accept that as truth, we're basically barking up the wrong tree because average users will never use this stuff because it's not convenient enough. It's not fast enough. It's not better than what they're currently using. And most people, let's be honest, don't really care about owning their self-sovereign data at this moment. No. Okay, they don't care.
They want something easy.
They want it easy, fast and easy, better. Now, if we can give them fast, easy, better, and sovereignty, will they take it? Yeah, they will. And I think that's the way that we need to think about it is it's and, not or. So I think investing in user experience, user interfaces, and usability, again, whether it's DAO tooling or DeFi products, I think the 2.0 on the back of all of this stuff is the application of better user accessibility. Where like somebody who wants to participate in DeFi, for example, doesn't have to go through the 8 layers of the candy cane forest to figure out how to stake their damn tokens. I got to be a freaking full-fledged certified degen to be able to like figure out how to use this crap. And certain people are going to be willing to do it, which is evidenced by the V1. But like, is that really getting the industry where it wants to go? It proved not to be durable and product market fit. Do we have product market fit for DeFi? Not really.
Making money, that's about it.
Well, and yeah. So I think, and see, as much as I'm for making money, I think if that's all we're making is money, that's a problem. because then what it does is it only showcases the opportunistic side of what this technology can do, the degenerative side. And if we're really going to focus on regenerative outcomes and abundance games, positive sum games, new economic models, inclusive opportunity, more egalitarian systems, we got to have more than just making money at the goal of this, right? We've got to make it widely accessible, transparent, trustability, permissionlessness. Like, look at all the rogues and security issues that we've got in DeFi, the hacks and all this kind of stuff. We got a long way to go before we've got the resiliency in DeFi technology to really be mainstream. And part of that's user experience, UI. Part of that's, security and smart contract fidelity. I mean, there's a lot of things to it, but we've got to take a serious approach to actually advancing the ball on those fronts, not just finding the next cutesy game to play so we can, degen some money out of it. Like, if that's all we do, then we've already failed. And it won't work.
Bang on there. I'd love to keep buzzing on sort of macro predictions here, more specific into the ETH ecosystem, DAOs, NFTs, to massive parts of the Ethereum-based ecosystem. Any predictions for either of those, John, DAOs or NFTs?
Well, I think DAOs are going to make a comeback. I don't know when yet. I think, again, a lot of that is correlated in my mind to user experience and user interface technologies that, call it DAO tooling in the context of DAOs, that make them more functional, usable, configurable. The other thing I think we're missing is a use case to point to that says, here's the recipe, right? Here's a DAO. All the examples that people try to give me about, oh, look at this awesome, successful DAO, like Constitution DAO. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what? Like, every DAO that exists was a giant grand experiment, and show me sustainability, show me a business model, show me where this actually turned into like an outcome and how you got there that created this recipe, this path, this template that others could follow to then replicate the success in various contexts of the world, right? In our commercial experiences. We don't have it yet.
Yeah.
We don't have it yet. So I think we're going to continue to see a lot of experimentation. We're going to see a lot of fidelity enhancements, development enhancements, tooling enhancements. And then one of these days, it's just going to be like, it's like slow and steady. And then all at once, you're going to see this big, narrative pop up where there's this DAO that's got it figured out. And who's that going to be? I don't know. I'm experimenting in several fronts myself, with Sport DAO and the Employment Commons LCA, it was the Opolis DAO. And like, we're taking a more long tail approach instead of trying to YOLO into some, crazy experiment. We're trying to take a slower approach to like figuring out how to do this in the long view. And, maybe one of those will work. I don't know. I think if I'm honest, they're all experiment.
It's got to be something plug and play-esque that is super clean, super simple.
Exactly. I think it's got to be something people genuinely need, not just that they choose to want it. I think it's got to be something that people need. So it creates a natural demand for it, right? Where it's not just like, well, cool. Yeah, I like art. I'll do that. Or I like video games, or I have a preference or a hobby or something. I think that's too abstract and there's not enough signal there. I think it's got to be something that's sort of core to human existence, one. I think two, it's got to be so easy where people can just kind of plug in and not think about it too much. Yeah. I mean, there's already enough voter apathy around everyday life. Yeah. I mean, do we really think that people want to participate in governance and things? They don't, okay? So how do you create benevolent governance systems that doesn't undermine your community benevolence, but also gets things done and can, advance the ball and be innovative and not just get in our own ways, because the loudest voice in the room has a tendency to get the most attention, but those people have the most time on their hands and aren't the most productive. So like, how do you actually avoid those kind of traps, and how do you actually make DAOs productive without traditional hierarchical systems? Like this hasn't been blueprinted yet. No one's really come up with the way to do it, but somebody will. That's my point. It's just, we have to methodically keep working on user experience technologies, abstraction technologies to not compromise security, privacy, data, identity, but also make it cheaper, better, faster for people to use so that we can find these use cases to plug and play, as you said.
Yeah.
And people can just kind of come in and be like, oh, wait, this is Web3? Oh, this is cool. They don't even need to know about Web3. Yeah. And I've been saying this since 2018, like the real threading the needle is where you create a system, an application that's just better, and people choose it and they go, oh, I had no idea there's a blockchain. What the fuck is that? Like it doesn't matter, which chain you're using or signing a transaction and all this, those things are complexities that honestly the average person doesn't want to be bothered with. And expecting them to want to try to convince them otherwise is actually a fool's errand. I think we've got to get smarter about not compromising the values of Web3, but embedding them in ways that people can just adopt them more simply. And it's the and, not the or. Yeah. And we haven't traversed all of that yet. And that's where I think we're moving into that hill.
Unless, and one of the analogies that I like to use, John, unless you're a developer, I can't remember the last time I was on a platform, a website, an application, you name it, Web2 I'm speaking about. And I was like, is this Java? Is this HTML? Is this C++?
WordPress? Is this, whatever?
Does it work? No. Is it quick? Will it give me what I want? Done. End of story. That's
well, and this is the nature of the beast, though. I think there's some grace we have to give here, because the early adopters of Web3 technology are going to be developers.
Yeah, that's true.
And they are going to be, the early users are going to be more interested in this sort of differentiation and the technical specs and this sort of dorkery that we get caught up in.
There's a lot of bias too. A lot of bias.
A lot of bias. Well, and then you get bags, right? So it's it's pretty astounding to me. I'm going to go out on a limb and even say this, even the Ethereum Foundation doesn't seem to understand how the existence of all these other chains, who are by and large EVM compatible, actually creates buoyancy for Ethereum.
Yeah.
So it's look, you can have a billion freaking chains that are, doing whatever. Okay. And in the end, they're all recognizing and giving credence to the fact that Ethereum's the king.
Yeah.
Not one of them anymore is trying to be an Ethereum killer. I haven't heard one of them say that. Not anymore.
No, that narrative's gone.
And it's but we still, even as ETHDenver, we get a lot of shit for having a bunch of sponsors that aren't Ethereum. And it's ridiculous. It's what are you doing? And I even said it to a person at the foundation like this. I won't name names because it doesn't matter. But I said, look, at the end of the day, if I had a chain show up to ETHDenver who had better tech and they had world-class ability to build community better than Ethereum, I think that chain should probably win. Why should we protect Ethereum just because we like Ethereum and Ethereum got us this far? But what if there was another chain that could get us to where we want to go and it had the power of community behind it? Because I often say that in today's world of open source code and public blockchains, that community is the new IP. It's not about your code.
Well said.
Okay. It's not about your code. Okay. You can't protect open source protocols in a freaking court of law as your competitive advantage. Your competitive advantage is your ability to attract, retain, and build community, which is attention, transactions, and ethos behind a movement that's social political in nature. Okay. There's no commercial entity, no business in this world that's really done that very well. Maybe sans like Tesla or Apple.
Yeah.
Who have that sort of really sort of almost pseudo-religious sort of belief system in their products, right? And there's other examples of that where people have done great job at marketing and whatnot. But in Web3, there's nobody that does community better than Ethereum. And the Ethereum community does the community. I do ETHDenver with my team. We don't get any support from the foundation at all.
What is the ETH community, the ETH Foundation, just sort of the ETH unit, the ETH movement as a whole? And again, I'm an ETH guy here, John, but Team ETH has been getting shat on for give or take the last almost year, we'll call it 9 months, more specifically in the last little bit. Yes, we've seen some nice price action, but that's correlative to Bitcoin and everything else. And we're not here to talk about price, but it just seems like a narrative is very powerful in life and even more powerful in Web3. The momentum of a narrative can break or make your company, protocol, software, you name it. It's tough.
Well, the narratives make and break everything. I mean, in the end, the narratives turn into beliefs, and beliefs are the underpinnings of reality, right? So if people believe that there's value in Bitcoin because other people believe there's value in Bitcoin, then there is value in Bitcoin.
So what's going on with ETH? What's going on there?
Well, I think I've spent time with Vitalik, and I would consider him a friend, and I really respect and admire him. But I think there's a part of him that doesn't like being this cultic figure for Ethereum, honestly. And I think I think this comes from a place of benevolence. I think he has a realization that he's had, or it continues to have, or is having, some sort of like desire to sort of kind of separate himself a little bit from having to be the kind of, the guy, right? And I think when you look at what makes Ethereum different, a lot of it boils down to a benevolent leader in Vitalik, honestly.
I love him.
Yeah, you can't not love him. I mean, he's actually, I know his family. I know his father. I've spent time with his father. His father's a good friend of mine, dear friend of mine. And I know his sisters. I've spent time in their home. It's authentic. There's a human authenticity to the Vitalik that I really appreciate. And, so when Vitalik speaks, he's not speaking, for some sort of selfish narrative or trying to convince you of anything. He's trying to give you his truth, and what he sees is as the most wise thing maybe he could say, or the thing that would be most value to whatever conversation's being had. And he means what he says. Now, does that mean that he's 100% right all the time? No, I don't think he thinks that at all. I think he would also agree that his beliefs around proof of stake, for example, there's a very noble sort of altruistic component to trying to be more environmentally friendly to mining and electricity consumption and all of that. But one has to wonder. I mean, proof of stake is not a proven system.
Yeah.
I think right now it's working because I'm not 100% sure on this, but like from a stress testing standpoint, we haven't seen anything cataclysmic trying to stress test it yet. If that were to happen, I don't know what would happen. I mean, who knows? I mean, it is possible to, as they would say, attack the system. There are countermeasures to that in the proof of stake model that they've built, but no one really knows, right? It's unproven. So I think Ethereum is a general use case for transactions as the sort of master chain and sort of the source of truth chain, or not the one chain to rule them all, but just like the base layer. It seems to be pretty entrenched. And I think this is why I'm saying like all the ancillary, whether it's TVL or transaction volume that happens on these adjacent chains that are EVM compatible, help Ethereum's volume. Yeah. They help Ethereum's value because it's all interdependent. And I think interdependency is an important topic to talk about here because it's not dependent, it's interdependent. And in a open permissionless world, I think having interdependencies and open development systems where you could build something that's better, but still have buoyancy, created in a positive some way is an important component. So I think Ethereum is just convenient to target. I think because you don't have a lot of marketing narratives and you don't have a lot of stuff coming out of the foundation that, honestly, I think the foundation just sort of minds its business and does its stuff. And I think they do a good job at it. They don't help us, and that's not a dig. Their stance on that seems to be that we don't need help. So we're trying to help people that do need help when it's like, well, okay. I mean, but 90% of the people that you're trying to help can't execute, and it'd be really helpful to us if I didn't have to take on so much stress personally. But okay, fine. I'm not entitled to anything. So it's not like I'm over here upset. I can very much empathize with their situation and the kinds of things that they're trying to do. At the same time, I think it's a little misguided, and, just for me, I think the community would probably appreciate a little bit more sort of, leadership, but I can also understand why they're not doing it, right? They're trying to let the community just decide where the community is going to go. I mean, in a truly permissionless world, that's the way things should go, right? So you shouldn't have a foundation directing traffic on everything that's going to happen. And so I accept that, and I accept my role as an independent contributor to the ecosystem, not paid by the foundation, not supported by the foundation, that I build things the way that I feel like is fit, right? And I try to maintain an ethos alignment with the community in the best way that I know how, which also includes being open to other chains and other protocols that claim to have the same goals as we have, that may or may not be somewhat competitive, I guess you could say. But like, we try not to get into the business of that. It's like, okay, is it net positive for the space and the effort that we're trying to put out into the world? Yeah, it's 51% at least. So we let them come.
Yep.
That's basically the basic litmus test. But we get a lot of shit for that because, you got ETH maxis out there that think, well, all this other crap's going to go away. It's like, well, you're probably right in the general sphere of startups. 90% of stuff goes away into dust anyways. So I don't think Web3 is much different. If not, it's worse. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be the arbiter of that. The market should be the arbiter of that, right? So like, all I do is create a big tent and a blank canvas for people to come and do stuff and open some doors and let the creative collisions happen. And then other than that, it's not really my job to be the kingmaker or decide who the winners are, right? We just open the doors and get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I get both sides of the story here. I understand the E Foundation's point in being fully decentralized, and I also get your point where it's like,
totally.
Look at an organization like the NBA. I'm a hockey guy. Why is the NBA so popular? They market their players. People care about players more than they care about teams. Just a small little example like that, where like, why not market the biggest conference, an event that is part of your community? Like, it probably...
Yeah, you would think that would be a pretty easy one, but they, so far as I know, we haven't had one tweet, mention or otherwise from the foundation, any social channel, newsletter or otherwise, or a website that would actually even refer to them.
I mean, everyone, at least like realistically speaking here, John.
But I don't care.
Everyone knows.
Everybody knows anyway.
Everybody knows.
And they know already, so I don't need the support. We're on, this is season 7 now, right? So like, we've got escape velocity. People know where it's at. People know we execute. People know that we deliver good value. It might be a signal enhancer if they were to do that, but we don't need it. Yeah, it's fine.
C'est la vie. Quick break, and we will return. Huge shout out to Prime XBT, longtime friends of cryptonews.com. Unreal trading system. That is a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. Whether you want highly reliable market data and performance, if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Big exclusive promo for listeners of the podcast. The promo code is CryptoNews50. That is CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50. And now back to the show with John. John, we got to get into some of the sort of micro/macro narratives, specifically with regulatory dynamics in the US. I'll tie this big shabam into Uno as we are getting a little tight for time. More so, not even really related to the whole market, the macro as a whole, but really just how it affects your conference, your show, your incredible week and weekend. You have regulatory dynamics, you have the political campaign coming up, you have evolving crypto sentiment post-FTX, post-Terra. We have positive sentiment with Bitcoin ETF. If you could sort of tie that all into one, you are literally the guy running the show with an incredible team. What are people talking about? What is their sentiment? How are they feeling? I'm sure it's a hell of a lot different than last year. It's got to be.
Well, yeah, I think just the fact that it's an election year, there's heightened tensions, questions, curiosities around what's going to happen, right? Like you've got some, random sort of SEC enforcements. You've got sort of intentional sort of, caginess around being clear on what can and can't be done. You've got vague statements by by Mr. Gensler, and frustration from I'm being nice, right? So many parts of our community are frustrated, and people like, whether it's CoinCenter and Niraj and their team, or it's Coinbase and Brian Armstrong and their teams, trying to force clarity on regulatory stance and policy, and how do we actually maintain the world's standing in the U.S. as a leader in innovation. Because right now, with having a gray cloud over us, with this sort of, you're just violating, security standards. What does that mean? In what case? Can you cite things? They don't want to get into it. They just say these things and then just walk away, and then somehow we're just going to go away. And I think things are going to come to a head. We just got confirmation that RFK Jr. will be in attendance at ETHDenver 2024. Breaking news.
Okay. I love that.
So this is the first podcast I've mentioned this on. Now, by the time this goes live, maybe it will be out in the sphere. But he will be coming and doing a fireside chat with Caitlin Long of Cheyenne, Wyoming, who's part of our community, who's also the CEO of Custodio Bank, talking about this exact issue: regulatory capture, uncertainty, central bank digital currencies, privacy, freedom, asset ownership, private property, all these things that we talk about in crypto and in the concepts of Web3 and how to advance humanity. This is going to happen on our main stage Friday evening at ETHDenver. Completely uncensored conversation between RFK Jr. and Caitlin Long.
That's awesome.
Yes. So buckle up, because I have been a party to the sort of room where it happened conversations about how, call it avant-garde or controversial, we're willing to be. And the gloves are coming off.
Fighting.
Okay. So if you're looking for a refreshing conversation that's based in truth and authenticity, no bullshit, no political propaganda from either side, you're going to get a raw conversation that I think everyone will appreciate.
He doesn't even really have a side. I know this isn't a political pod, but he's sort of revolutionizing the whole thing. This could be it's not going to happen because there's so many trillions of dollars, gridded and just so ingrained into each sort of party. But he's doing something special right now.
Well, I think you'd be surprised. If you look at the electorate breakdown, it's never happened in the history of America and recent politics and modern political history where the independent middle is actually bigger than the aggregate of the left and the right.
Interesting.
So it's over 50% now who identify as independent. This has never happened. Now, what that's asking for is the creation of a new party. If you've got 50% of people in the middle that have no home, and let's say 25 and 25 over here who are happy being entrenched in the polar opposites of sort of the political sphere, what do you do with these 50%? My prediction is that you're going to see a movement through the spring into the summer that, whether it happens now or post-election, I could see this turning into a whole new political movement when it comes to a new party. Andrew Yang came to ETHDenver 2022, and I had the opportunity to spend an afternoon with him where he was talking about something similar to this. And his approach was sort of very different in going after specific Senate races and trying to win independent seats to then leverage power. If you have a very slight majority in the Senate, for example, and you've got 2 or 3 seats at this part of the Forward Party, for example, you now have control because you've got to build a coalition with either side, so you can sort of leverage your political position to get what you want, right? Mm. I think RFK is doing it very differently. I think he's seeing it from a root human level, saying, people are just dissatisfied with these polar narratives and the divisiveness and the hate and the dishonesty about just, the gaslighting of it's the Ministry of Truth from 1984.
Such a battle.
And it's wild.
It's an unneeded battle.
It's so wild how much bullshit people are willing to spew to protect a narrative. But you can understand why. It's the game design, right? You have to defend your position at all costs. You can't admit fault or error, because then that's going to give people reason to doubt you, distrust you. and then you lose your power and position. So you have to double down, triple down, quadruple down. And what RFK is doing is taking a more, call it humanist pragmatic approach, a neo-pragmatism, to saying like, look, humans just want to solve problems. And I think most people are pretty reasonable about what they believe and how people should be treated in general, with decency, with kindness. But we also have to have some variation of law and order. We have to have some semblance of structure and rules, or else it's anarchy. And anarchy is proven to be bad, just as much as over-authoritarian structure has been proven to be bad. So it's somewhere in the middle. But then how do we use our tools, technologies, resources, and talents to come together and find that middle ground in a way that's actually constructive for humanity? And what I'm seeing now is, if you've got 50% of the population that this message resonates with, he wins. Because you've only got 25 on the polar end. So that would assume that he's getting every independent mind, which is probably not going to happen. But in a three-way race, even some of these sample polls that you see, you got 30%, 30%, 31% with 2% on its undecided. And he's right there in a horse race with these guys. And we're in February.
Yeah.
So like, I could see this becoming, what I like about it is, you know, I'm in crypto because I have a similar neo-pragmatistic approach. I don't get into ideologies. I don't get into finites. I don't get into certainties. You know, there's certain principles about life that I believe in,
Yep.
and how we get there is up for, it's not where, but how, right? Like, I'm open to how, and I'm open to be flexible on how, but I love the idea of the Web3 crypto tool set that actually creates a new paradigm of sustainability for things like privacy, things like ownership, things like transparency that we've just never had before. You know, in our legacy systems, these things are not easy to get. Trustlessness is not easy to get.
Yeah.
So how do we actually get trustless elections? How do we get trustless ownership of property rights? How do we get trustless data ownership? How do we get self-sovereign identity? How do we get self-sovereign employment? How do we get self-sovereign lives, commercial lives? You know, how to banking even? Like, how do we get to these things? And I think the merging of this pragmatism that I think from an overall sort of life approach that he's got, and also standing up to corrupt interests. You know, he's got a career, 35-year career of suing the government and federal agencies and all of this stuff because of corruption and doing bad shit to people.
Yeah.
And he's won a lot of this stuff. He's been right. He's been demonized, but he's been right. And like, I could get behind that. You know, let's get the corruption out of there. Let's get back to like brass tacks and talk about what is actually going to advance not only the interest of Americans, which is supposedly the first and foremost priority of the president of the United States, but like, how does that bleed over into being good for a positive sum world? You know, not a win-lose for Americans, not a lose-win for Americans, but a win-win for everyone, starting with, you know, this neo-pragmatistic, you know, sort of policy and getting back to basics, human basics, where we shouldn't be fighting over a lot of these things from a polarization. The divisiveness is really toxic. And I think people are ready for something new. So in any case, I'm obviously, anybody listening to this is going to instantly know that I'm a little bit of a Bobby puppy when it comes to my personal opinion, but we're not presenting it to the community as that. What we're doing is saying, like, look, you decide for yourself. You know, he's going to come and make his case, and he's going to have probably one of the most authentic conversations you've ever heard around banking, regulatory environment, privacy, ownership, the things that we care about in crypto. You will not hear this conversation just about anywhere else.
Yeah, but John, this is going to go mainstream. Like, has anyone from CNN or Fox News reached out for a media pass?
Well, they don't even know about it yet.
Yeah.
We haven't, like I said, as of right now, I'm just dropping this right now, you know, about a week in advance of when this goes live on your stream. And by the time it goes live, it'll be out there. But yeah, we already have many mainstream media outlets in attendance coming, but I would imagine many, many more are going to be coming.
Yeah, I love it. John, electric as always. You are a human electric factory, my friend. I love it. Last very full question for me here. The name of the new party. I know this isn't a politics pod, but it's a great way to end. Any good names for the party? for RFK's new independent party?
Honestly, I would call it the Up Party.
The Up Party?
The Up Party. That's what I would call it. I've heard people in the sort of, normie world on Twitter call it the We the People Party.
Nah.
That has a very almost kind of MAGA feel to it that I feel like it's going to fall short. I think the Up Party, there's an analogy. I don't remember where this came from, but there's an analogy that I really like that I use even in describing the social political movement of crypto. Because let's be honest, that's what we're doing. This is a social political movement. Yep. We're trying to create new economic models, new outcomes, new game systems, new monetary policy. These are social political topics. Most of us say that we're not political because we don't like the current brand of it.
Exactly.
Okay, but it's not that we're not political. It's actually a misnomer. We're very political. We care deeply, but it's just we don't want to play that game. So if you think about a tug of war, okay, tug of war is a zero-sum game, right? You're like pulling like this, and it goes back and forth, and it goes back and forth, and it goes back and forth. And the problem is, maybe it was Robin Hanson who talked about this, the guy that wrote The Elephant in the Brain. Good dude. But it's this perpetual struggle. And if you look at our political system currently, it's the tyranny of the minor majority. So that when it goes this way, I have just a little bit more pull, right? So I'm going to kind of take advantage of that. And then the next political cycle comes around, and it kind of goes back this way. And then we grab as much as we can. And then it kind of goes like this.
You don't ever get anywhere.
And you're not really getting anywhere. And there's special interests and campaign finance and super PACs and corporate interests and all this stuff bastardize everything by promoting their own interests. And then we get screwed, right? What if you attach a rope to the center to a helicopter and you pulled this direction? What would happen to the people on the poles?
You bring them closer.
Bring to the center, right? So it's not left or right, it's up.
Yep.
So the Up Party would be my name for it, because I think it's a better representation of bringing people together around common human issues that we all genuinely care about. Like, let's get past all this, like, whether it's race baiting or gender baiting, or it's, banking threats, or whatever the soup du jour is of the day, and how we like attack each other. Because I think most of it's not sincere. I think it's designed to create division intentionally by them in power who benefit from us being divided. Divide the people, keep them fighting amongst themselves, and they won't be paying attention to what you're doing. It's an old bankers thing from back in the 1800s. I care not who makes the laws of a country, so long as I can control the money supply.
Yeah.
So who's the real bad guys here? Is it the people that are mostly well-intended people? Like 98% of the people in the US are good-hearted people. They are. But we've been led to believe incorrect things about each other. And I'm sort of in the middle going like, I don't know, like, how do you fix this? And the only thing I can think of is, well, let's go up, let's
up only.
Bring people together and stop messing around.
Up only. John, love it. Thank you so much for coming on as always. We're actually 4 minutes over here, but really appreciate your time as always. You and the team are going to crush it at ETHDenver. Before we let you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you and ETHDenver online and on socials, and let everyone know where they can snag ticks as well?
Yeah, so we're on X, formerly Twitter. Mostly, this is where most of our stuff goes. If you haven't applied or registered to come, you got to apply. It's free. Go to ETHDenver.com, get your application in as soon as possible. We are still accepting free ticketed applications. If you want to find me, I'm mostly on X at PowerJohn, and then at ETHDenver or at SporkDAO are the main accounts for ETHDenver and SporkDAO.
Amazing. Folks, what an episode with John Paller, founder of ETHDenver, everything ETH related, future of DeFi, DAOs, NFTs, the huge news with RFK Jr. speaking at the conference, of course, at ETHDenver, UI, UX, the origin story of POAPs, you name it, we talked about it. Huge shout out to John and the team for making this happen. To this team, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. As always, the listeners, you guys are the GOAT. Eustace, you are the man. Thank you as always, everyone. Love you all. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.